Welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Melissa. I am the owner and artist here at the Top Drawer RVA located in Richmond, Virginia. Today's project is this beautiful piece that I picked up at a local estate sale. It was originally $50 and I got it for $30. I love a tiny nightstand like this. This little washstand is the perfect size for me to pick up and move around on my own. So as an independent furniture painter, this part is an added bonus for sure. As always, I start by inspecting my piece, taking it apart and seeing what I can find inside. You never know what inside treasures might be in there. So this piece had a harp style top that was not original, but I actually really like it. So I'm going to be incorporating it into the project. And this piece ended up having something that I've never seen before. It has a secret drawer. Have you seen it? Can you see it on the front of this piece while I'm working and inspecting the interior? It's right here, right up at the top. You're going to see me fussing and pushing with it because I could feel the trigger at the back. There's some sort of closure that was kind of like an elastic base, and I could feel the piece moving back and forth, but I could not figure out how to get it out of the piece. So this required a good old call to my dad. I needed my dad's help. He ended up telling me that there was a small hole at the bottom of that drawer where you could stick your finger or tool up in there and it will actually trigger that spring base to release the drawer. And when I did that, it just popped right out. It's a pretty cool feature on this vintage washstand. So I was missing one wheel on this project. Since they are wood, they tend to break quite easily. I just found one in my stash and replaced the missing wheel with a vintage one. I decided to use my Dixie Belle's mud to fill in the existing holes on the front two cupboard doors. My plan is to add new hardware to the piece. Since this one did not have all matching hardware, I'm going to have to source some vintage pieces for the new cupboard fronts. Well, that mud was getting dry. I fixed the broken drawer with some glue and some clamps and gave everything a slight sand to make sure that my paint would adhere well and to smooth out any of that Dixie Belle's mud that I used for repair. So you can tell by the color of this piece that somebody had slapped on some red stain at one point in its life. The stain was kind of overlapping the edges and really kind of dripping down the sides. So I was going to need to use Boss for my stain blocking tannins. Using Boss in gray or white is going to give you the ability to lock those stains in so that when you do paint over top, they are not going to bleed through, especially anything that has red stain. I'm using my brand new foam roller from Dixie Belle. I absolutely love this for getting a nice smooth surface when applying it to larger areas. I do use a smaller chip brush that I can just throw away to get that Boss into the corners and making sure that I'm covering all the areas. So what's the plan for this little cutie? Well, I am going to go Alice in Wonderland with the new Roses in Red transfer from Dixie Belle. And pulling my colors from that transfer will be very easy using Dixie Belle's chalk mineral paint, and I found some vintage hardware in my shed. Let's get bold, let's get bright, and let's get started. We're going to begin with the front drawer. I kind of want to break the pattern up. If I do too much color, I find that it gets overwhelming. I like to disperse some black and white into my projects. So this entire drawer will be painted in white cotton and then adding Harlequin diamonds over top. So add 2 even coats to this drawer front to begin with for my little project. And while that dries, we are going to start on the base of this piece. I want bold and I want bright, so I'm going to start in with In the Navy on the bottom feet. I find using a darker color to blend into the bright cobalt kind of dulls it a little bit and makes it a little bit more, I don't know, aesthetically pleasing to your eye. So we are going to mix a couple colors. In the navy, that bright cobalt blue, and then I'm actually going to be adding amethyst as well. Amethyst is that beautiful purple color that you see, and I'll be using my Best Dang brush and my smaller brushes to blend these colors together. This will require 2 coats because of that light base. If you wanted to kind of cheat the system, you could start by painting the entire piece black and then blending your second coat directly on the black. But for this piece, I ended up doing 2 coats of these blended blues and purples. I really didn't even change out my brush, to be honest. I used kind of the same brush for all of the colors except for the blue that I wanted to stay true. When doing an ombre blend, it's always recommended to use a separate brush for each color, but sometimes I just get into the project and I just do all the things at the same time. So I kind of use the same brush to mash and blend those colors together. Don't forget to keep a spray misting bottle filled with water handy. You can use that to reactivate the paint and keep it damp for blending. I've left this part in real time because I often get a lot of people asking to see the entire process. I do tend to speed up parts of my video because I kind of feel like it's going to get a little boring if you just have to sit there and watch me paint the same thing over and over again. But for beginners, this is kind of a helpful way for you to learn how to lay down your colors, assess the plan, and then blend them on the second coat. When you see me using a heat gun on these projects, it's just because I'm impatient and I want to speed up the dry time a little bit. I also work with a fan on the floor, and when that fan on the floor is blowing onto my project, it helps me get that first coat dry so that the second coat can be applied. So while that base coat is drying on my tiny little washstand, let's work on the top. The plan for the top of this piece is going to be a little bit different. I'm going to be adding some hand painting to the very top of the piece, but for the curved sides, I'm going to use buttercream and holy guacamole to create a striped effect with tape. I'm using my yellows painter's tape, which FYI, really kind of stinks. I'm not a fan of the yellow, but I'm out of the blue. So you can see some small areas when I peel this off where it has leaked through because the paint went under the tape. So don't do what I did. You can always seal your tape with a clear coat before you begin. But again, I'm rushing, and this piece actually took me a lot longer than some of my regular furniture painting pieces. Okay, here is my handy dandy tip of the day for painting on diamonds on the front of a piece. This is extra hard because it's curved and serpentine style, so I find that measuring out complete even squares and then using my tape to plan my diamonds is the best way to get an accurate layout on the front of the drawer. After I figured out my pencil layout, I came in with a sharp knife and my tape to plan my diamonds. I'm going to stipple on my black caviar to create these beautiful diamonds and get them laid out perfectly. The tape held up fairly well on the front of this piece versus the sides, but I still did have a couple tiny little touch-ups to complete after I peeled it off. You can simply then use a pencil eraser to erase those pencil lines that I used for my grid and planning. While waiting for this to get dry, I started on the top of this piece. There's a small curved section that sits in between all of the areas. I kind of want to say it breaks it up. So I use my Gemstone Mousse with a little bit of added gloss clear coat into it to kind of section that area and also paint the metal on my wheels. You can also use Big Mama's butter to condition those wood wheels and help them stay nice and fresh. Let's work on those top 3 drawers on the top of the piece using muscadine wine. This is a color I haven't used in a while and I forgot how much I loved it. And then coating the entire top surface with buttercream. I didn't use white because I want a more antique finish. And now that my base is dry, we can apply our Dixie Belle Bells and Whistles transfer. This is called Roses is Red. I've had a little bit of a hand in helping design this transfer. You guys know that I love Alice in Wonderland, that I love that kind of whimsical feel to my furniture. So designing a transfer with bold, bright flowers and vintage playing cards was really, really fun. Bells and Whistles transfers are super easy to use. If you are a beginner, I don't want you to be afraid of these transfers. You can use them on corners, you can use them on edges, bend them around curves. They're really quite simple to use. Each transfer arrives either in a tube or a flat pack, along with an instruction sheet and that little wooden tool that you see me holding in my hands. What you're able to do then is cut up the desired images that you would like to use for your piece, peel off the white backing, and stick it down onto your surface. After sticking it down onto your surface, you're just going to use that enclosed burnishing tool to push it off the plastic and onto your piece. I then like to smooth it out with my fingers to make sure there's no little air bubbles trapped inside, and it looks perfect. These transfers are nice and thick. You can't even see the colors that are underneath when you lay them down on top, and I love that. You are able to cut up and design whatever you like with these transfers. I decided to keep it kind of flowing up from the bottom to the top, and then I will continue the pattern on the top of the piece as well. So let's get a little artsy and work on something a little bit different for the top of this piece. I traced out a rectangle and I'm going to try and recreate a giant playing card. Painted a base of cotton to begin for the base of the card, and then I'm going to come in and hand paint a bunny. If you go onto Pinterest, you can find a ton of images of Alice in Wonderland. I found one and I used that as my base to kind of copy a bunny on top of the Harlequin stencil for this piece. It's actually basically the same bunny that you would find in the Alice in Wonderland transfer from Dixie Belle as well. So I laid him out in a pencil so that I could determine the size and the layout for the piece. And then I came in with multiple colors of Dixie Belle paint to hand paint that cute little bunny right over top of my Harlequin stencil. I'm going to keep his colors a little bit more muted and then accent him with a black outline as well as some gemstone mousse in gold as well. What do you think? He's turned out super, super cute. I added the little hearts and the Q for the Queen of Hearts and then worked on aging the edges with a little bit of Voo Doo Gel Stain. By using that Voo Doo Gel Stain to kind of come in and dirty up the edges, he's going to look a little bit older, and the playing card itself is going to match the style of playing cards that are on the transfer. So I applied the gel stain kind of to the edges and then used a wet cloth to push that style of dirt around. I just want to stain it and age it up a little bit and make it look a little bit more defined. I didn't like the stark white contrast of the playing card on the top of the piece. I want this entire piece to feel vintage and old and really kind of dark Alice in the way that it appears. Using this water-based Voo Doo Gel Stain is a great way to get an aged effect. You could actually do this over top of your entire piece and get it really dirted up to the vintage look that you're going for. Once that gets dry, I can come in and add the rest of my Roses Are Red transfer to the top of this piece. I'm going to layer them around the edges along with those beautiful black flowers to really give it a cool, dark Alice vibe. I found some vintage hardware in my stash that would work great on this piece, but it's really dull and not shiny, so I zhuzhed it up with a little bit of my Gilding Wax in gold and then painted the harp piece for the top in a similar fashion as the base. Again, just blending those colors together, and FYI, these jewel tones blend like a dream. They make it super simple and easy. I added a new faux metal keyhole to the front to kind of dress up that drawer, and I did the same gilding wax to match the hardware. I then reassembled the entire piece and put it back together. I sealed the entire project in Dixie Belle's wax in clear for protection, and then I also added gilding wax in gold around the edges for a little bit more shine. I did add some wax in black around the edges for a little bit more depth and definition, as well as to add a little bit of darkness and age to the piece. I also use the same gilding wax to come in and accent the edges of all the drawers, so when they open, instead of seeing like a wood lip, you're going to see a beautiful gold band across the top of each drawer. And since gilding wax is an oil-based product, you can put it on last, dusting it on with an artisan brush or your finger, and it will cure up and seal on its own. There's no need to top coat your gilding wax at all. And then this little cutie was finished. I absolutely love how this turned out. My vision for the playing card on the top is perfection. It's so super cute. And since this is a washstand and not overly large for a size of furniture, you could probably use this as a bedside table or an entryway table. Anywhere you put it, it's going to be a conversation piece. I am really glad that I decided to keep the harp even though it wasn't original to the piece. I think that it adds a fun touch of whimsy, especially with that little stripe pattern on the bar. Imagine if you hung a really cute little roses is red or heart garland across the top, it would be perfection. So this piece did take me a little bit longer than some of my furniture flips, but it was absolutely worth it. I really love the design. I love the giant roses and the playing card. It's just so super cute to me. I think that it's a one-of-a-kind piece that now has a new life, especially with that cute little secret drawer.